Whitfield, and I'm the owner of AcuDetox clinics in South Africa. I'm also the owner of AcuDetox Academy. I'm the chairman of the National Acupuncture Detoxification Association of South Africa. I was very fortunate to study in the USA at Lincoln Memorial Hospital under the late Dr. Michael Smith, amongst the best doctors and psychiatrists in the world in learning how to treat people for mental and physical illness using acupuncture detoxification. But my life wasn't always like this. I was born in Johannesburg. I grew up on the West Rand, and I led what I thought was a pretty normal life. Both my parents died, however, when I was 16 years old, and that severely traumatized me. I immediately became an alcoholic. I loved getting drunk. I used it as a way of being able to communicate with my peers, and I have hundreds of no memories of incidents where I had drank to complete blackouts, having to learn from my friends how I'd behaved the night or the day before. I've been very fortunate in that I've traveled the world. I've owned many different businesses, all have been successful. However, as soon as I achieved success, it always seemed to slip through my fingers, because what I was looking for was happiness. And I thought happiness came from money. And so I was chasing money for most of my life. I ended up as an alcoholic and a drug addict, homeless hobo on the streets of Durban around the Point Road area shortly before my 30th birthday. And luckily I was given an opportunity to recover, which happened shortly after the point of almost committing suicide. I wanted to commit suicide because my life was incredibly painful. I didn't want to die, but I just didn't want to live anymore. I just couldn't live with the pain of my life. I had alienated all my friends. I had alienated everybody that I'd worked with in business over the years, colleagues, and nobody wanted anything to do with me. My uncle left me on the streets of Durban. He told me I was a curse to the family and that I should never contact the family ever again, and that they wanted nothing to do with me. And those words cut like a knife and shattered my heart, because I loved my late uncle very, very much. But he did so because of my behavior. I'd ended up pawning his brand new Jetta for crack cocaine, and luckily he was able to get it back, but that was the final straw for my family cutting ties with me. I planned my suicide. I'd stolen 40,000 Rand from my employer at the time, because I didn't intend to survive the binge that I intended to spend the money on. I planned to take my own life at the end of a 5-day binge. I spent the money on crack cocaine, on prostitutes, on porn, on hotel rooms, and alcohol and other drugs. And then it came to the point where I'd almost run out of money. I hired a room in a horrible place called the Palmerston Hotel, which is just the entrance to hell. It's filled with addicts and prostitutes and drug dealers and criminals. The place smells like urine. I rented a tiny little room with just a single bed, a small little dressing table. The floor was painted red oxblood, stoop paint kind of floor. It smelt like Jay's fluid, and It had a tiny little bathroom, just a shower, toilet, and a basin. And that's where I planned to take my own life. But I needed to go out and buy a bottle of vodka, because my plan was to swallow 20 ecstasy pills with a bottle of vodka, and that's how I intended to end my life after being awake for 5 days on crack. And so I went to an escort agency and I bribed the barman to sell me a bottle of vodka. And I was having my last drink, and I just sat there at the bar, and I decided to pray, and I just prayed, and I just said, God, if you're out there, you know, in a half an hour's time, I'm going to leave this planet. Either I'm going to meet you or I'm not. Maybe I'm going to meet the devil. Maybe not. Maybe it'll just go black and that'll be it. But the point is, in half an hour's time, I'm going to leave this planet. I'm going to take my own life, and I hope you'll intervene. I'm asking you to intervene because I don't know how to stop this process of what I'm involved in right now. And no sooner had I finished this little prayer that a woman walked in off the street, and she was a street prostitute, and she was trying to pick me up, and it was the last thing on my mind. All I could think about was getting back to this horrible place to go and swallow these pills one at a time. And eventually she got up from where she was sitting and she shook my arm to get my attention, and she said to me, you don't have to do what you're going to do. And I had not told her what I was going to do, and I thought I was kind of dreaming. She took out a till slip or something out of her handbag. She wrote her name and her phone number down on a piece of paper, and she said to me she lived in a 3-bedroom apartment on the beachfront. She lived alone, that she had no one to talk to, and that she was lonely. She said that I could come and stay as long as I liked. She didn't want money from me. She didn't want sex from me. She said 3 times, there's no reason to do what you're going to do. And she said to me, if you'd like to come, give me a call and I'll give you my address. And then she left. And I just kind of sat there wondering what had just happened. And I just said, God, is this your idea of divine intervention? And there was no voice saying, yes, it's me, God, phone the number. There was just the reality, phone the number or don't. And so I decided to phone the number, and I got her address. I had to bribe the bouncer to walk me there because I was too paranoid to walk in the street and alone. And so he walked me to this place where she lived, and she welcomed me in. From the time I arrived, this woman spoke constantly, and what I noticed was that she was telling me her life story, and I felt quite guilty about the fact that I was in her house, because compared to her life, my life was a walk in the park and hers was an absolute nightmare. At the age of 8, she had been raped by her father and her uncle. At the age of 13, she ran away and became a prostitute, sex worker. She'd been raped, she'd been gang raped, she'd had abortions, she'd had children taken away from her. Every relationship she'd been in had been abusive, physically, verbally, emotionally, mentally. And here she was, being so nice to me and inviting a complete stranger into her house. And so I thought maybe she was a little bit crazy. But you know, I wanted her to shut up, but this woman just spoke constantly, and I couldn't tell her to shut up because it was her house. And then she asked me if I wanted to go to church, and I said to her, you must be crazy. I said, no offense, but I'm an alcoholic, drug addict, hobo, and you're a prostitute. Can you imagine the two of us walking into church together? And I said, by the way, I smell like stale urine I need to have a shower and I need to go and crash. I haven't slept in 5 days. And she said, well, I'm going, and off she went. Before she left, she said to me, you know, the only reason I go there is because the people are really nice to me. They're the only friends that I have. They treat me with love and respect. And I enjoy the conversations and the tea and coffee and biscuits afterwards. And she said to me, you need friends. And I said, yeah, that may be true, but I don't think now's the right time. Anyway, from the time she left until she came back, which was about 2 hours, there was a little voice in my head saying, tell the truth, Warren, the truth will set you free. It was like a dripping tap on my forehead. It was just constant and persistent. It was irritating. And when she got home, I said to her, I need to tell you how I ended up in your house. And for the first time in my life, I told another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. I told her everything, every lie I'd told, every rand that I'd stolen from whomever, every person whose heart I'd broken. And I spoke for about 3 hours, and towards the end, I noticed a funny look on her face. For a woman who never stopped speaking, she didn't interrupt me once. And I sort of looked at her face, but the look on her face was complete love and compassion and no judgment whatsoever, which I'd never seen before in another human being's face. And besides my wife's, I don't think another face ever since. And I looked her in the eye and I said to her, are you an angel? Because I felt like suddenly I was in the presence of an angel. And she gave me a funny look and funny little smile, as if to say, you've caught me. And she didn't acknowledge or deny that she was or wasn't. She just said, carry on with your story. And so I did, and when I was finished, she said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel free. It was as if all this weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I could no longer be condemned because I've admitted to everything. It can't be held against me anymore or be used against me because I've just admitted it. And it was like being in court and being charged with a crime, and you just say, I'm guilty, and you take responsibility. And that now you're at the mercy of the court. The public prosecutor can't accuse you anymore because you've admitted to it. And instead of receiving judgment, I received mercy. I was fortunate to be able to be given an opportunity to recover. I spent 3 weeks in a home for hobos in Lenasia, in the Indian community south of Johannesburg or east of Johannesburg, whatever. And that's where I learned to eat curry 3 meals a day. It was quite interesting. But I was treated with love, compassion, and no condemnation, no judgment. And I was able to start my recovery there. I then went to a place called Hands of Compassion, where I spent 9 months in inpatient treatment, after which I left and began working again. I also live with Asperger's, autism, so I have an obsessive mind. My mind has always found things to become obsessed with, and unfortunately in the past, before I discovered what I'm doing today, I was never really able to control whatever my mind became obsessed with. My mind became obsessed with whatever I found interesting. And I would spend weeks awake learning everything there was to learn about whatever I was obsessed with. And then I would collapse for a few days and sleep. But this is the starting point of my recovery. So I started working, and because of people would say disability, I think I've come to understand that it's a gift. Within a short space of time, I started 2 new businesses for the company that I was working for, that are still operating today and operating at a profit. But in my spare time at nights, I would go and study counseling. Early on in my recovery, I realized that I needed to change my attitude from one of self-entitlement to one of gratitude. I also learned that the grand sum total of all my beliefs and all my opinions was obviously very misguided if I ended up at the point of suicide and in a home for hobos in Indonesia. And that if I wanted my life to change, I needed to shut up and listen for a change. And so I took that into my recovery, and after qualifying as a counselor, I ran a support group for 2 years on Friday nights, because that was a dangerous night for me. That was normally a night of the week that I went out partying, and after 2 years I was very discouraged because I had 1% success rate with the people that I was trying to help. And the people that I was trying to help were drug addicts, alcoholics, gambling addicts, sex addicts, porn addicts, food addicts. Everything came my way. I went to a friend of mine and I said to him, I'm the world's worst counselor. And I said, I think I need to throw in the towel and just admit that I'm not good at this. Either that, or I should accept that the reality is that 1% of addicts will recover. I think it was a combination of 2 things. It was a combination of my approach was wrong, and secondly, I had to learn that I can't fix people. People need to fix themselves. But he said to me, Warren, man is a 3-part being, spirit, soul, and body. And what you're trying to do, work with the soul, the mind, is you're trying to help people. You're trying to get people to change their minds. And he explained to me that when people's bodies are toxic, their minds don't function, which is why people will go into a rehab, spend 4 weeks there, and walk out the door and fall flat on their face within the first 30 days spectacularly, and be very confused as to how they ended up there. And he explained to me that there was a hospital in New York that had been practicing auricular therapy, which quite honestly I thought was some sort of fancy word for a diet, because back in those days my concept of detoxification was the Kellogg's all-brand 10-day detox program, where a woman eats Kellogg's and then she's floating on a cloud afterwards. And so he said to me they've got the highest success rate in the world, and that caught my attention because they would need hospital records to prove that. And all too often what we find is rehabs claiming success rates which are an absolute thumbsuck, because unless you test people on a daily basis, especially people who are drug addicts, because the nature of addiction is deception and manipulation, you cannot work on people's word. You need evidence. And because this was a hospital, that caught my attention, so I went online and did a bit of research, but I went and looked at the results, not at what the actual treatment was. At the time I was working as a financial advisor in Sandton, and I literally quit my job the next day. I walked into my boss's office and I quit, and he said, "Are you crazy? You're one of our best guys here." And I said to him, "Nope, I'm going overseas to America to go and study a diet. And he thought I was insane. All my friends thought I was insane. And 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Huntsville, Alabama to go and do the course that I teach and am a registered trainer internationally for. And I studied at Dr. Jim Richards' clinic in Huntsville, Alabama, the Impact Clinic of Huntsville, Alabama. And I qualified there as an acupuncture detoxification specialist. And I went to Dr. Richards and I realized that I would be the first person in the country to be offering AcuDetox. And I said to him, I would really love to become a trainer so that I can teach other people.
Whoa. First, you want to tell us about the surprise of being there?
I'm about to get there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
You have to go back there and tell the story about that.
Okay. We'll tell the story of when I arrived in Huntsville.
Yeah.
Okay. So I arrived in Huntsville, Alabama to go and study under Dr. Jim Richards at the Impact Clinic of Huntsville. And I was picked up at the airport by a very dodgy looking guy who turned out to be one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. A humble man, an honest man, a very sincere man, a very wealthy man. But he looked like something off of a ZZ Top album. He had white hair and a ponytail and a white goatee down to here. He had a beer boop and tattoos and a biker's jacket. And I instantly thought I'd made a mistake. And on the way to the motel, he asked me, "So have you ever had acupuncture before?" And I thought, what a random question to be asking me. And I said to him, "Why would you ask me something like that?" He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, what's acupuncture got to do with anything?" He said, "This course is acupuncture." I said to him, "I thought it was auricular therapy." And he said, "Hello, auricular therapy is ear acupuncture. This is called the auricle, or the outer ear, and auricular therapy means ear acupuncture." And to be honest, I was horrified, because I had these religious beliefs that I'd picked up somewhere along in my younger days, and I thought it was evil. And he said to me, "Why did you come here?" And I said, "Because I want my clients to be successful. This is what I want to do with my life." And he said, "Well, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to study ear acupuncture, because that's what they do in New York." And so I did the course, and I was blown away from day one. I arrived there with broken heart syndrome. About a month prior to this, my girlfriend had left me. She'd had an affair. Everybody thought that we would get married. Her little daughter, her 5-year-old daughter, was calling me daddy. And I had a broken heart. And I went to the doctor and I said to him, "Look, I can't function. I'm struggling to sleep. I can't eat. I can't think." And he put me on Prozac. He put me on tranquilizers and sleeping pills as well. And so I took a lot of medication with me to America, because I wasn't sure how much it was going to cost there, or how much doctors cost either. We all have heard the rumors of what private healthcare costs over there. And anyway, Mike, the man who picked me up at the airport, put the needles in my ears in the motel room. And it was the most incredible experience of my life. I instantly felt my whole body just release all of the tension and anxiety that was inside of me. My mind became quiet. I saw colors. My vision even improved slightly. And I said to him, "Wow, if this is what this treatment is, I can understand why drug addicts and alcoholics like this, because this is amazing." But the interesting thing was, the following day I woke up and the pain in my chest was gone. And I didn't feel like I needed that medication anymore. And I just threw all of it, thousands of rands worth of medication, into the bin. I just didn't need it anymore. And so I was convinced from day one that this was going to be an amazing experience. I then qualified there as an acupuncture detoxification specialist, or acu-detox specialist. And I went to Dr. Richards afterwards and I said to him, you know, I'm going to be the first person in the country that's doing this. How do I become a trainer? And he said, if you want to become a trainer, you're going to have to go to New York. Dr. Michael Smith is the only man who decides on who trainers are. And if he says you can become a trainer, then you can become a trainer. So I said to him, please phone him and speak to him for me, which he did. And Dr. Smith said to him, put him on a plane, send him here. So I arrived in New York, and I went and studied at Lincoln Memorial Hospital in the South Bronx, which is a pretty rough area. And there they have 300 outpatients a day coming into the clinic for treatment. And so I clocked up a lot of experience in a very short space of time, and I learned firsthand the power of the treatment from the many different types of people that came into the hospital for help. I then came back to South Africa and I practiced for 6 years, and then submitted all of my cases to Dr. Smith, and he then certified me as a trainer. And for the past 7 years or so, 6 or 7 years, I've been teaching people all over the country, mainly in Johannesburg, Durban, and Cape Town. But I firmly believe that this protocol and the wisdom and the logic behind this treatment really has the power to help this country and the world, especially with the trauma and the fear that's going on in the world today. The protocol is so effective for dealing with anxiety and stress, and as we know, stress is the #1 killer. If we are able to de-stress properly and quickly, we are able to get to a point where we are able to think differently and respond differently, because we're not responding from the fight or flight frequency. We're responding from the healing frequency. And so I hope that you will consider very carefully doing this course. It's a profession. All of the course material that you need, it's a complete course. It has videos, audios, diagrams, photographs, and you also, all of the students have access to me through the practicals, the practical part of the course, even through the exam, and it's after they become practitioners. I also am available to all of my students all the time, free of charge, not all the time, during office hours, free of charge, to share the knowledge that I've gained over the last 14 years and to guide them and help them so that they can become successful at helping our communities and helping our people in South Africa.